and share something that I'm truly passionate about, and at the same time have the chance to learn as well. So thank you all so very much. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Cynthia and Jill.
Great. Thanks so much, Keith. Thank you, Alyce. It's really interesting and kind of reflecting on my own experience with this activity. And I think some of the comments earlier around sort of vulnerability too, right? So we're kind of opening ourselves up in a way that maybe doesn't feel natural for people, which I think speaks to the challenge, right? And the need to kind of continue to push and grow. So thank you both for your time and for everybody's kind of participation and engagement as we went through this exercise. And so now we get to kind of transition to thinking about storytelling to media. And for that, I'm happy to introduce our next presenter, Nikki Wheeler. So Nikki is an innovative communications professional with 20 years of global experience working with organizations ranging from startups and nonprofits to governmental bodies and Fortune 200 companies to achieve strategic communications objectives. So Nikki is currently a senior communications manager at Amazon and is based in Denver. And with that, I will throw it over to you, Nikki.
Thank you. And let me thank you, Alyce, let me thank you for that kind introduction. I am excited to be here with you all today. And, you know, when we talked a few minutes ago about vulnerability, I will open up to you all with the vulnerability of my own. I think that, you know, I take great comfort in a corporate presentation style. And so following Keith and Alyce, I'm like, oh, wow, I am so stiff. This is going to not be as much fun as what they just did. So I hope that you all hang in there with me. What we're going to go through today, I hope will provide you with some tips and tricks and things that you can apply into your own practice. And another shortcoming of mine today is a bit of a technical challenge. So Tim is actually going to be helping me drive the slides today because for some reason in the computer update, I was unable to get my system to work. So as we think about media relations, I want you to keep something in your mind. From my perspective, you know, media relations is the place where planning and preparation meets execution. Tim, let's get started on the next one. So in your survey responses, you indicated that you'd like, let's wait for Tim to, there we go. And hey, Tim, I think you might want to go into, there we go, thank you. I shouldn't complain about how Tim drives the slides since he's helping me, but thanks, Tim. So in your survey responses, you indicated that you'd like to incorporate social media tools and creation into your work. Next. So with this in mind, I've sort of shifted the agenda and how I usually talk about media training to start more with you as a content creator and then work back to understanding the media and your role as a spokesperson. In my discussions, I always like to have people think about media in the way that Malcolm X does. Because if you are a consumer of content and you watch the news, you see the power of the media and what it's capable of doing. So as you evolve as media practitioners and work to engage with reporters, you have a real opportunity through the content you create and how you understand how the media works to leverage your role as a spokesperson to really make a difference in how stories are told. Let's go to the next one, Tim. So many of you may be familiar with the PESO model: paid, earned, shared, and owned. Today, we're going to focus predominantly on the aspects of earned, shared, and owned. And we're going to look at the different ways that we can use earned, shared, and owned to advance our own stories, engage, and connect with people in media. Next up. So let's level set a little bit about why it's important that we are able to create our own content. I think about 10 years ago, we in media relations and integrated communications started noticing shrinking newsrooms. And across the country, there were fewer and fewer reporters. At the same time we noticed shrinking newsrooms, we also noticed something else, and that's the rise in citizen journalism. And when you think about citizen journalism, at that time it was, what's the big deal? The credibility of a real reporter versus someone who just captured a video on the street, who do you think people are going to believe? Well, with the Arab Spring and what we've seen, People tend to believe the people who are capturing news and sharing it on the street. So as we evolved our practice in media relations, we began to think about what are the ways in which we can capture content that we can own, package it and share it in such a way that we can construct stories ourselves, becoming reporters in our own rights and sharing our own news and being less reliant on the quote unquote professional journalist. Next. So from the media relations perspective, we look at content creation in 3 different ways. There's the content, the assets you develop, things like articles, blogs, bylines, videos, your annual reports. To context, and those are the people that you can provide who will give a understanding about the information you're sharing. They provide those details. They fill it in with the human aspect of what your content is telling. And then the connections themselves, where you share that story and how it works. So let's take a look at an example of this in action. So if we'll go to the next slide, Tim. This is, Keith talks a lot about funny and fun storytelling opportunities. Well, in 2016, I had an opportunity to work with a large multinational corporation, and within its portfolio was a cybersecurity solution that could detect and mitigate cyber threats. At about this time, Mirai, a particularly nasty botnet, was on a rampage. It was attacking networks globally. So what did we do? We took our content, a threat intelligence report that our leadership had already written, and we put it into a media advisory that we pushed out to reporters, inviting them to a live Periscope and Facebook session with our chief security officer. Our chief security officer stood in front of our threat intelligence board and explained exactly what was happening with this particular cyber attack and demonstrated the mitigation efforts that were underway to stop the attack. By going live with Facebook and Periscope, we were able to invite reporters to ask questions real time and get easy answers to help anyone understand what was happening with this particular threat. At the close of the live session, we were then able to repackage that video and that same media advisory and threat report we already had and push it back out to reporters. In the end, this story was shared locally and nationally with outlets as great as the New York Times and the Washington Post. So there's nothing special about what we did here. We didn't have to create something new. We just had to repackage what we already had. Now, in your own practice, there's a great way that you can do this. Let's go to the next one, Tim. And that's through the launch of a backpack reporter program. So 2005, I don't know about many of you, but in media relations, we don't always get very much budget. We're like the last person you think about when it comes down to the budget line, and we have to be very scrappy and resourceful. And being scrappy and resourceful means figuring out what do you have that you can use to capture and tell a story. So I created the Backpack Reporter program with my team in 2005 to turn our day-to-day content into news opportunities. So back then, of course, we used a clunky handheld camera and we had to figure out how to edit things. But now we have evolved to the fact where we can do all of this from a smartphone. So what you're trying to do is leverage the people that you have on the ground to provide journalists with those types of assets, insights, and stories that they may not be able to get because of why? Shrinking newsrooms and inability to get to you in the day in a news cycle. So what I always think about is if you're going to be at a conference like today, you're here today, any one of you could have taken this opportunity to create what we call a key takeaway video that talks about the 3 key things that you think you're going to learn and take away from this conference. You can package those up into a media advisory and push them out. So that's what we do with the Backpack Reporter program. We give people insights and opportunities to engage with content and experiences they may not be able to access, not for lack of desire, but ability to get there and cover the story. And just frame of reference, if you want to go to the next one, Tim. A backpack reporter kit is inexpensive. The basic tools that I say that you want to have in your kit is a smartphone, a tripod, and some type of lighting. And if you want to get fancy, I, for example, repurpose an old iPad and use it as a teleprompter with my clients. So for less than $100, you can capture content that you can package and reshare and implement the Pack Reporter program in your own organizations. Now, the next thing we want to talk about, go ahead, Tim, to the next one, is extending the story. So now that you have some ideas about content, there are ways to extend your story and leverage that content. Take, for example, Fortune Insiders. Fortune Insiders is a free program that you can sign up for where you can be a content contributor. You sign up with the network, you create a profile, and then through Medium, you write and share original pieces of content that are then picked up and used in Fortune magazine. So through this program, you are able to tell your story and extend your ideas to a global audience. And all it takes is your time to set up a profile and a commitment to creating original content that you can load onto the Medium platform. Let's go to the next one, Tim. In addition to Fortune and Medium, you can also sign up for Haro, or Help a Reporter Out. This is a great free tool because you can get alerts from the media, journalists who are on deadline, who are writing stories, so that let you know what they're covering and what they need a source for. And you can also sign up yourself and your thought leaders as expert sources. A word about the expert source. Take the time to fill out the profile in detail and identify the keywords that are significant to the types of stories that you're trying to tell and include them in your profile. It'll make it a lot easier for the reporters who are looking for sources to find you if they can source through those keywords. Next one, Tim. A final thought on owned. Everything you do, everything you have, the testimonials you receive, the reports you generate, have the ability to become content. I'm a big fan of Barbara Corcoran. I read her book. It's fascinating what her story is. And when you learn about Barbara Corcoran, you learn that long before she was a real estate mogul or a star on Shark Tank, she was a New York real estate agent hustling to move merch. And she could not figure out how to break through until she had an idea. Every quarter, she would compile the real estate sales and losses in the Manhattan area into what she called the Corcoran Report. She sent those reports to the media, and the rest is history. All these years later, the Corcoran Report is still the definitive resource for real estate ups and downs in the Manhattan area, and even broader than that. And all she did was take something that she was already doing and repurpose it. So when we think about things like annual reports, surveys, testimonials, and data, I always encourage my clients to break them down and parse them out. A 35-page report is 30 individual pieces of content that you can put out into the environment and share with people and get their reactions too. And then you have access constantly to link back to that report, to have opportunities to highlight different areas of emphasis that you think are important. So think about the content within your organization. What's your Corcoran report? All right, so Tim, you want to go on to the next one? Now let's talk about further extension through the second circle in the PESO model, shared. So in working with my clients when it comes to social media, I always like to start with individual customer plans that address their specific goals. This is also effective at an organizational level. Let's go to the next one, Tim. So for the most part, generally I encourage a 30, 60, 90-day approach where you're listening, you're learning, and then you're engaging on social platforms over time. Social media has ended up being a great place to connect with reporters. In fact, I have a number of journalists that I work with at the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, who say to me, if you can't pitch me over Twitter, you must not know what your story is about. And what they're signaling to me and to my colleagues is that they want succinct, easy to digest pitches and follow me on Twitter. So if you go to the next one, Tim. The first step engaging in the social media is really to take an audit of your social platforms. Where are you today and how do you show up? This is a dummy of a report that I did for a client, and you see it's super basic. I looked at where this client's properties were, where her presence was, her activity on those, and then went back to her and recommended some ways that she could enhance her presence. And in this case, it was basic things like adding a background image, providing a biography and a summary page, enhancing how she contributed to the conversation, and then overall making it seem like she wanted to be on the platform. The next aspect of this, you want to move to the next one, Tim, is really defining your goals. So I've talked to a lot of people and I always ask the question, why do you want to be on social? Well, it's because everyone's there. I have to have a Twitter account. And one of the things that always strikes me is that that is not a good answer. If you want to be on social, you really need to have clearly defined goals. And I say this with all dramatic intended. Social will eat you alive if you don't have a plan for why you want to be there. And if you don't understand what your goals are and what you're trying to get from it. So take the time to think about, why do I need to be on social? And then, Tim, to the next one, please. Understand the specific platforms, who they reach, what their audience is, and which ones are the best ones for you. So Twitter is extremely popular, but does Twitter actually reach your audience? A lot of people talk about, like I mentioned to you, Facebook Live. Well, is Facebook the right place for you to be? And what combination? Instagram is extremely popular. This was done before TikTok. What does your TikTok look like? Is TikTok where your audience is? So the other part is being smart about how you use social and identifying the right platform to help you reach your goals. Every day there's a new social platform that comes out. Every day there's a new hot thing. The new hot thing may not be necessary for what you need to achieve your goal. So again, being smart and defining the channels. Next. So we've got the goal, we've got the channel. What does success look like for you? In the example I showed you early on, you may have noticed my client had a very low follower rate. I believe she had like 150 followers. So one of her goals was to increase her presence and increase her followers. That was a goal for her because she wanted to improve her overall presence as a thought leader. Ultimately, she wanted to be invited to participate in more speaking engagements. She wanted to be invited to participate in more panels. So to do those things, she needed to increase her presence. So for her, we really defined, increase in followers, increase in click-throughs, and we also defined for her a contribution rate with regards to how she engages with other people's content, so they became aware of her and would seek her out as a thought leader. So similarly, as you're thinking about your program, what does success look like to you? What are you trying to achieve and how will you measure it? Next one, Tim. Along those same lines is followers. So we talk about a follow strategy. I always say follow, 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 follow. Get onto the platforms. Look at who's talking about the topics that are important to you. Take the time to click into their profiles. What kind of influence do they have? Is it one person who has 50,000 followers, or is it 50,000 followers who have one person that they're looking after? So knowing who you want to follow, start following them. Look at the reporters who are covering your topics. Start following them as well, but also start sharing their content. Reporters have egos. If you take the time to comment on their articles and share it, they will appreciate it. And they will also become to know you and look for you on social platforms. So figure out who you want to follow. One of the tips that I always have is like, you want to spend 10 minutes a day on social platforms, looking around, seeing who's commenting, looking at the trending topics, identifying hashtags. Similarly, you want to spend at least 10 minutes building up your followers. And, I'm a news junkie, so I watch the news constantly. And through watching the news, I'm like, oh, I should follow that person. I keep a pen and paper on my desk and I write down all the people that I think that I should follow. And every day I go in and I spend 10 minutes doing a little routine hygiene on my social accounts, unfollowing some people, following new people, and figuring out different ways to engage with them. It does take discipline, so I put it on my calendar, just a tip, carve out that 10 minutes on your calendar to get on those platforms and engage. Next one, Tim. So we talked about the purpose of engaging, but similarly to the platforms you want to be on, you want to know the best times of day and time of week to engage on those platforms. All platforms are not created equal, and they have different times in which you get maximum value from your post. So as you're looking at the times that you want to gauge, take a look at what's the best time to post. Another part of this, which is really important and I can't underscore enough, is having a comprehensive content strategy. So it's not enough to know, oh, I need to post at, from 3 to 5 on LinkedIn on Wednesday. It's a matter of mapping out, on Wednesdays, we post about this topic. On Thursdays, we post about this topic and we link to these resources. Being thoughtful about the content you want to share and implementing a consistent strategy is also crucial to your success. And it also makes it easier. So like all of you, I've got a day job and I can't spend all day long posting things on Twitter or on LinkedIn. Many of these platforms give you the ability to schedule your posts. So as you're looking at your content calendar and what you want to share, you can go in the night before, the week before, a month ahead and pre-plan all of your posts so that they go out automatically. Now, this is not a placebo for being able to bust in or engage with breaking news. This is your day-to-day routine maintenance. Even if you plan all of your communications, you're still going to need to go in and check those platforms for what's trending so you don't miss an opportunity. I'm just saying you can make it a little bit easier on yourself if you map out your content, pre-plan its distribution, and kind of set it to autopilot for your more routine communications. So we want to move on to the next one, Tim. So here's an example of a social media integration I did last year. This is all about the announcement of a new delivery station in Chicago. For this announcement, we did all the traditional aspects. We did a press release, we did a blog announcement, we did an on-site media event, socially distanced, and we also did a series of social media Twitter posts, if you want to go to the next one, Tim, highlighting the content from our releases and also key quotes from public officials who attended the event. And one of the things that's fun about this is that you're extending the story. You're also giving people an opportunity to share and engage with the content in a different way. You want to go to the next one, Tim? A quick note about that is that, the examples that I just showed you were created with Adobe Spark. This is a great resource for those out there who are entrepreneurial do-it-yourselfers who may not have a dedicated creative resource in their organizations to create visuals for them. Even at Amazon, where we clearly have resources, what we don't have is the ability to pull those resources off another project and onto, oh my goodness, I've got an announcement in Chicago. So a resource like Adobe Spark can provide you quickly with professional look and feel of everything from your social media posts to videos to a whole host of other things. And many of the templates are free. And then there's I believe it's like $14.99 to subscribe if you want some of the more elaborate aspects of the tool in terms of enhancing how you share. So a quick tip for that. Okay, Tim, next one, please. So now that we've talked about creating content and building out your social media presence, let's move to the final circle in our PESO model, and that's earned. Earned media, obviously, is all about working with the media and transforming your story into an interview. But before we get to the interview itself, let's talk a little bit about journalists and what they want from us. I think, our articulated intelligence team reminded us to lead with a story. And the story behind this quote is an all too familiar one for reporters today. This is a particular reporter that I worked with ahead of a trade show. And I had a strong relationship with the reporter. I sent him a text message following up diligently. Did you get my pitch? We're going to be on the floor. We can't wait to sit down with you. And his response to me, there are 1,000 of you and one of me. Do the math. I'm like, I thought we were friends. But this speaks to a larger issue. Next one, please, Tim. We started our discussion today with shrinking newsrooms. Well, as many of you know, the situation didn't improve last year. In fact, we lost another 11,000 journalists in the United States. So now our shrinking newsroom has even fewer beat-specific reporters, higher demands, and less time. And so, there was like a glory day in media relations where I could reach out to one reporter, and the next thing I know, he was covering me, and we had this wonderful relationship. Oh, I'll just call Bob, we'll get that covered. Well, now Bob's got 5 other jobs, and I'm no longer his priority. Bob is competing with a 24/7 news cycle. He's got that citizen journalist who can be on the corner capturing video and getting into the newsroom before he can get his story written. And Bob is being pulled in so many different directions. Next one, Tim. So what do reporters want from us? I talk to reporters 3 or 4 times every day. And the one thing they come back with is they want our help. They need access to knowledgeable, well-informed sources. They need accurate information that is just the facts and not us trying to persuade a storyline. They need visuals. They can no longer send photographers out. They can no longer just say, oh, we'll send a video guy out. So they need us to provide them with visuals that they can share. They need a well-written press release. One of the ongoing jokes, and there's a group of reporters that get together with media relations professionals. We kind of have like a little coffee clutch where we, talk about the month and snarky comments and what went on. And reporters love to show, well, what's wrong with you and your people? You guys can't write a press release that's helpful. Look at this. And it's like this massive block format, millions of words. And the reporter's like, I need a smart release. I need to know what's the news. I need quick bullets. I need facts, who to quote, and links to assets. And I'm like, that's not too hard to do. And the other thing, clear points of contact. A lot of releases and things that I've seen, you don't know who to contact. Or they send you to some massive corporate newsroom that is filtered through to who knows where, who might get assigned a story. So whenever you can, providing a clear point of contact so a reporter who does want to cover your story knows who to reach and how to reach you. Next one, Tim. So, the articulated intelligence team talked about getting personal. And imagine for a moment, if you will, that you're that reporter that I started this conversation with. You've got 1,000 people emailing you. 80% of them don't know who you are or what you write on or what you cover. They just know that you're at this trade show and they've got a press release and they need to pitch it out, so they've sent it to you. And so when we think about getting personal and working with reporters, I like to tell people it's about the right story for the right reporter at the right time. Targeting your message to the reporter that's covering your issue and making your pitch specific to what they write on and what their audience reads. So genuinely diving deep into who they are as journalists, reading their coverage, watching them on the news, following them on Twitter. Getting personal is about taking the time to build a relationship with the reporter. So when those 1,000 people contact him, he says, oh, I know Alyce. She's always on point. She knows what I need. I'm answering this one. Next up, Tim. The other aspect of this is what's going to make your story break through? What's going to be your unique angle that says, this is something that I haven't written on before that is valuable, that should be shared? What are the nuggets of information within your organization that you can use to share a unique angle? And with those nuggets, are they hyperlocal? Who cares about this story? How can you tie it into the news of the day in your market? And what assets do you have that you can include with it? Do you have a spokesperson? Do you have someone who can go on the record? Do you have photos, videos? What can you give to make your angle a unique standout? Next one, please, Tim. Humility. So I like to tell people that media relations is the best career you can ever have. It's taken me around the world and back again and given me the opportunity to work with some incredible people. Not all of them have been very humble. I once worked with a client whose entire communications goal was to get on Oprah. When I asked, why Oprah? And, his response was, I'm amazing and Oprah is the best. I should be on Oprah. And, it's true. The work that he was doing was impressive and it was groundbreaking, but it wasn't Oprah worthy. And I say that not to discount who he was or what he had to offer, but to say a good sense of humility goes a long way. And if you have an idea, using your relationships, you can actually leverage reporters to help you get your story told simply by saying things like, I have an idea. This is something we're working on in our organization. What do you think about that? Is that, these are the different story drivers. Taking a more humble approach to what you have to share can put you in a better position to be covered than just assuming that the news you have is the most important thing happening today. And I'll share I always like to close off on the Be Humble discussion about the importance of gratitude. Reporters are people just like you and me. They really appreciate it when you take the time to say thank you. Thank you, the story came out great. I throw that in because I know that I have been guilty on more than one occasion of calling a reporter and making sure that he understood quite well when he got a story wrong, but I had not been as gracious about calling and saying, wow, that was amazing. That was balanced. You really understood what we were talking about here. Thanks for a great story. So I have a little reminder in my desk journal to reach out to my reporters when I don't want anything, to simply say, hey, love the story that ran last week. That was some great, great coverage, great insights. I really appreciate the work that you do. So part of those relationships is remaining humble and being grateful. Next one, please, Tim. Don't follow up so much. So again, my friend with the 1,000 pitches in his email, the text messages, think about your email. Think about all that you have to get through. Your information, what's the old adage, failure to plan on your part doesn't create an emergency on mine. Well, your information may be urgent to you and groundbreaking and critical, but it's not to the reporter. So once you've sent it, let it sit there for a minute. Do not feel the need that you need to immediately follow up. My favorite is, did you get my press release? Is it in your inbox? Nobody likes that. Give it some time to marinate. The next, avoid gimmicks. We don't have time for gimmicks in our own lives when it comes to responding to emails. Reporters have less time. So while you think it's catchy and fun, whoops, did I do something wrong? It's not. It's annoying. And it puts you into a separate folder that says, do not respond to. The next piece about this is, if after a week and you haven't heard, feel free to follow up, but don't overwhelm the reporter with follow-up emails and phone calls. They've gotten your communication. If they want to use it, they'll reach out, they'll let you know. Next up, Tim. So send a short pitch first. One of the things we talked about, and we've gone through this, is don't have time to read all of it. Get to it. What is it? What's the story? Who cares? Why do I need to write on this? If the reporter's interested, they'll get back to you. Do not think that you need to send a massive missive about what the news is and break it down. Quick hit, in and out. What is it about? Why do I care? Why should I write? Make it easy for them to get back to you and ask for more information if they want it. Next one, Tim. One thing I really do like is including alternate reasons to reach out to you. So if a reporter isn't interested in your initial pitch and you have a breadth and depth within your organization of resources, information, talent, thought leaders, share those, make them aware that, hey, we have these other things that we can talk about, so that there is a trigger in their mind of, oh yeah, so-and-so contacted me. They have someone I can reach out to. So give me an alternate reason. Let me know, what you're working on. And a part of that is, the link back to your website and resources in terms of creating pitch bios for your thought leaders, so that I can easily go back and source information to figure out how I may be able to leverage you in a story for the future. Next up, Tim. I like to be honest about your goal, because I think sometimes in the media relations side, there's a thought that you have to be sneaky. Be clear about what you want. If you want a link in the story to your website, say, I want a link in the story to my website. If you are highlighting a specific report, product, event, opportunity, be clear up front. I would like for you to do X. That way the reporter can tell you, oh, we can accommodate that, or oh, we can't accommodate that, but we can do X, Y, and Z. Inveigled requests do nothing but confuse people and result in you not getting what you want from the experience. So be upfront, be honest. In your coverage, I'd like to see, is that possible? It'll go a long way. Thank you. Next, Tim. So now that we have a bit more understanding about what journalists want from us, let's talk a little bit about you and your role as a spokesperson. So not too long ago, I was working with some colleagues at Facebook and Tesla when this story about Elon Musk broke. And people in the room were downtrodden because Elon is a challenging client to work with. Elon doesn't follow the rules, and he makes it hard for media relations professionals to do their job. The upside is Elon can get away with that because, well, he's Elon. But the rest of us need to be a bit more disciplined, because what the statement here is true. It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. So move on, Tim. So let's take a look. Everything in media relations and communications starts with a goal. In considering your interview that you finally landed, that you're going to be able to tell that great story that you've worked on, what is your single overarching communications objective? What are you trying to achieve with the interview? What is your goal? So from your overarching communications objective, what are your 3 key messages? What are the things that you must have included in this discussion for your interview to be a success, pardon me. And the next question I always have is, can you consolidate your messages into 27 words that can be delivered in 9 seconds, articulating 3 key messages? So 2793 is an industry model, because when you think about the amount of time that a broadcast interview has, it is very quick. And if you go beyond 2793, you're going to be cut off. If you think about the space that a journalist has in an article, if you go beyond 2793, you run the risk of being cut off. So 2793 keeps you tight, keeps you succinct, and makes sure that your message is articulated the way that you want it to come across. It's difficult to do, but once you get into the practice, it becomes easier and an effective way to make sure you're communicating the right way. There's a lot of debate about this last point. Write down what you want to say, rehearse your delivery. A lot of people, and I have clients who their favorite thing to say to me is, I'm better on the fly. I'm good if I can wing it. I just need top line information. And, I give them a softball interview that is not going to be valuable so they can practice before I put them on the main stage to see their philosophy in action, where they quote unquote wing it and I'm better on the fly. And what they've come to find is that, I'm not as great as I thought I was, and maybe I should have rehearsed more and written some things down. So even if you do not plan on using the notes, take the time to write your messages down, rehearse your messages, practice your delivery, and to evaluate, is that coming across the way that I want it to? Your interview performance is critical. And so you want to make sure that you're taking the time to give the best show that you can. Next one, please, Tim. So your role as a spokesperson, I kind of break it down into these specific categories for a reason. Stay on message. Generally speaking, before an interview, you should be provided with a brief, and that brief should tell you who you're talking to, what the focus is, and what the key messages are that you've agreed to. You want to stay on message. Too many people deviate from what their core messages are and get themselves into trouble. Learn your core messages, stick to your core messages, don't deviate. Subject matter expert. The reporter is sitting down with you because they have an expectation of your knowledge. So make sure that that expectation is met. Know what you're talking about and stay within your area of expertise. Among the hardest things for people to do is acknowledge, hey, you know what? I'm not the right person to answer that question. I can tell this is important to you. I can connect you with someone who can help you. What I'm here to talk about is, and go back to your area of expertise. The next part about this is being a resource. So the reporter doesn't have all the answers. They're coming to you because they need information. Be a helpful resource. Be valuable in terms of helping them to understand the content, the context, and make connections for them. And as our friends at Articulated Intelligence shared, be a good storyteller. One of the things that I coach my clients on is how to integrate experiences and stories with how they are delivering their interviews. Experiences and stories bring the information to life and help the reporter to connect with what you're telling, and ultimately the recipient of the information, the viewer, to understand, or the reader in this case, why what they're learning about you and your organization is important. And the last one here, visionary. You'll always have an opportunity to follow up and close out. You are a subject matter expert in your field. You may be able to share a nice vision of what the future looks like, or what you expect or anticipate as a result of whatever it is you're talking about. Next one, Tim. Media interviewing styles. I always like to throw this in here because, you know, like people, reporters come in all different forms and sizes, and their approaches vary. What we talk about, and you're going to see this in some of the examples I'll share in just a few minutes, is you've got the rapid fire. This is a reporter who asks you one question after another. Bam, 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 bam. So much so that you aren't really sure what the question is. And so what we talk about with the rapid fire is that this is your interview. You command it, you control it, and you have the opportunity to say, you went through a lot of information there. What is your question? And get them to restate exactly what they want for you. The next one is the slow ski. This person, you would think that they could not form a sentence. It takes them forever just to get the most basic piece of information out. You're a busy person. You've got things to do. Why is this taking so long? What's he doing? This is a tactic. The slow ski is depending on you being frustrated with how slow they are to get a question out, so that you will start talking over them to fill the gap. Don't fall for it. Sit back, relax. This is their interview time. You've only blocked out 15 minutes for them. As long as they take, that's as long as they have. That's the only question that they'll get out. Wait, be patient, let them ask the question. Don't assume you know what they're going to ask and jump in ahead of them. Wait for it. One of my favorites is the sweetie nicey. This reporter will make you feel like you are the best friend that they have never had. They are so fortunate to talk to you, and they will butter you up, and you'll think this is so great. Why don't I do more interviews all the time? I love this. Don't fall for it. It's a tactic. They have a job to do. And as soon as you feel comfortable and you've let your defenses down and you're going in for it, they will land a bomb of a question that will knock you off kilter. Remember what you're here to do. You're here to adhere to your single overarching communications objective and deliver a message. Stay focused. The last one is the wanderer. One of my favorite reporters is one that goes by the name of Rodeo Joe. I'm not making that up. Rodeo Joe is a real reporter. Rodeo Joe goes everywhere and nowhere and back again before he gets to a question. He's actually an attorney by practice outside of his journalism career, but my clients have hated and loathed having to talk to Rodeo Joe because he challenges them to be in the moment, be patient, and follow where he's going. So by the time he comes around, it's the same thing. Wait for the question and go back to your story. Don't be distracted by his wanderings. Remember your job and what you're here to do. Next one, please, Tim. So bridging and flagging, it has to be like one of my favorite things. Full disclosure, I use this in my personal life. Whenever I'm in conversations with people that I don't want to have, I'll find myself saying things like, let me emphasize again, taking out the garbage is not my responsibility. The real issue here is your inability to, it's like, wait a minute, how did this turn on me? It turned on you because I bridged and flagged back to my key messages and what's important to me. So I always tell people, one of their concerns is how can you possibly know every question you're going to be asked? The good news is you don't have to, and it doesn't matter because you can bridge and flag back to your key messages and your story. And ahead of interviews, I always provide this sheet to my clients and I encourage them to practice it because it's not natural to bridge and flag. Your natural tendency is to be helpful, answer the question that was asked, and feel good about helping the reporter. But that's not your job. Your job is to tell a specific story and not to answer questions that do not support that storyline. So bridging and flagging gets you back to where you need to be. But it's a discipline. So if you have an opportunity, take a look at these, practice them with your friends and family. You'll snicker to yourself inside, as you are successfully achieving these. I enjoy it. Next one, please, Tim. So another trick of the trade here is staying positive. Your brand should never be associated with anything negative. So, and make a point of that. So here's an example for you. One of my clients was accused of a heinous crime, not providing appropriate care, which resulted in the death of a young man. The news reports and headlines had, convicted my client of this crime. They were guilty. And in talking with reporters, we never used my client's name associated with the crime itself, with the term murder, with the term killed. It was always the organization. We are confident that through the course of due process, the facts in this matter will come out. Never was the client's name used with anything negative or derogatory. This is another one that can be very challenging to incorporate into your practice, especially if you find yourself in a position of defend, where you're defending or trying to clarify. Just make it no, our name doesn't go with anything negative. We are associated with rainbows, bunnies, and everything that is happy and good. If it's something bad, it is the organization, we, them, they, and not our name. Okay. Tim, next one for me, please. All right, so let's take a look at some examples of some people who do it right and some people who could probably use a little bit more practice. This is an interview with Senator Elizabeth Warren, and let's watch the interview, and then we're going to come back and talk about it. Tim, would you go ahead and play the video, please?
Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts is calling on her Republican colleagues to schedule a hearing.
And Tim, you may not need to push that button with regards to sharing the sound that you told me about earlier.
Yeah, let me.
So while Tim is working on the sound for this, let's talk a little bit about what's going to be in the interview. Elizabeth Warren is a well-respected senator. She's often invited to be on news programs. And in this specific interview, she's being asked about the Senate process for the approval of a judge called Merrick Garland. And so the interview is supposed to be very focused on Garland. And let's see if we can hear what Senator Warren has to say.
Are you enthusiastic in your support of Judge Garland?
The way I think of this, filling a Supreme Court vacancy is one of the most solemn tasks undertaken by this government. This isn't supposed to be a circus.
We still don't seem to have the volume, huh, Tim?
Yeah, we can all hear it.
Oh, you can, go ahead. Sorry, thank you. I just didn't hear it. Go ahead, sorry.
He has sent us a nominee, and now it is our job in the United States Senate to hold hearings, to examine his credentials, and then to have a vote on him. That's what the Constitution calls for.
With respect, Senator, the question I asked was, will you support Judge Garland?
But But that's the whole point right now, is that we want Judge Garland to come over. I want to meet with him. I want to look at his credentials. I want to see him perform in a hearing. And then I want to be able to have a vote on him. That's what advise and consent means. It's not supposed to be some kind of crazy political process. You know, Senator Toomey said, the Republican from Pennsylvania said, well, if he had been nominated by a Republican, then yes, he'd be willing to consider him, but not since he was nominated by President Obama. You know, this has just really taken off in a direction that is a direct insult to the president. It is a direct insult to the Constitution, and now it is a direct insult to Judge Garland.
But Senator, the Republicans are now pointing to Joe Biden's comments back in 1992 when he said a nomination should not be put forward in an election year. So why is this different this time in 2016?
Look, let's be clear. Just go back and look at the history. Every single Republican, every single Supreme Court nominee to a vacant position has had its hearing and a vote. The only ones who didn't get a hearing because they went straight to a vote. That is 100 years of actual fact.
Senator, let me turn to the presidential race in 2016. All of your female Democratic senators have endorsed Senator Hillary Clinton. You have not yet made an endorsement. Will you do it before the convention?
You know, I don't have a timeline for this, but I got to tell you, watching what's been going on the Democratic side really makes me prouder to be a Democrat. We've been out there talking about the issues, both Hillary and Bernie, about how it is that young people are going to be able to get an education without getting crushed by student loan debt, how we can better rein in Wall Street, how we can have trade deals that don't just leave workers in the dirt.
You know that your lack of an endorsement at this stage, though, has raised some questions. Let me ask you this. Do you believe that Senator Clinton should release the transcripts of her speeches to Goldman Sachs?
Look, I think that our candidates are out doing what they should do in a primary. They are debating the issues.
You're not answering my question,
Senator.
Senator.
For themselves. What I'm doing is I'm telling you what I think should be going on right now in this election.
Well, it's just a yes or no question. It's a yes or no question. Should she release the transcripts or not?
What I've told you is I think that the primaries are doing exactly what they should be doing, and the candidates are being tested.
What will it take for you to make an endorsement of either candidate?
I don't have a timeline.
What more do you need to hear?
What I'm glad to see is what's happening right now, and that is that the Democrats are out talking about the issues. I think it makes it very distinct what happens between our side and what's happening over on the other side.
Someone
said, they're doing some kind of reality show. We're out here trying to talk about the issues that affect American people.
And so are we. And one of the questions that's being raised, has the Democratic Party and has Senator Clinton, Secretary Clinton, moved from being a Clinton Democrat to a Warren Democrat?
You know, what our candidates have told us is what they will stand for as President of the United States.
Is it moving to the left?
I think what it is moving to where America is. America's hardworking families, America's middle class is really on the ropes. And what we need is somebody in the White House who is going to be out there fighting for them. That's what this next election's going to be about. The Republicans make it clear. They are going to keep working for the rich and the powerful. The Democrats are making it clear. They're going to get out there for working families. They're going to fight to build a future, not just for some of our children, but for all of our children.
Senator
Big
Warren,
difference between those.
So great to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
It's always good to see you.
Democratic Senator Elizabeth.
So that was something else. Not only was that an exceptionally long interview, it ran for 4 minutes and 50 seconds. If you counted, there were 10 questions asked. Senator Warren didn't answer one of those questions, not one. And you noted that the reporting team tried at least 2 times to get her to answer a question. 3 different sets of key messages were delivered, and not one of them had anything to do with what they were asking. So while it can be frustrating to watch an Elizabeth Warren does her job. She is a spokesperson. She is there to deliver a company story, in this case it's the Democratic Party story, to stay on her message and not to be deflected or deviate from what she's here to deliver. So Love it or hate it, she's effective in her role as a spokesperson. Now let's take a look at another example. Next one, please, Tim. This is an interesting case, and before Tim plays it, let me set it up a little bit for you because you won't get it from this. Bill Gates is actually interviewing with Charlie Rose on the Charlie Rose Show about the Gates Foundation donation around clean water in Africa. Let's watch the clip and you tell me what you think about how Bill performs. Go ahead, Tim.
Good news. Bill Gates this morning is backing the government in its fight with Apple. The Microsoft founder tells the Financial Times the San Bernardino case is a limited and unique request for information. The stance is a break from his technology industry peers. Last night, I asked Gates to expand on the security versus privacy fight on my PBS program.
Are you in favor of a private company, in this circumstance, Apple, in the secret of their own lab, and they're being able to destroy whatever they create after they do this for the government one time only? Should they do that?
Well, in every case up till now, when the government's come in and said, what's the banking information? You know, banks like to keep their customers' information private, but no bank has ever defied the government. I think Apple, at the end, they're just forcing a complete judicial process. I don't think anyone from Apple is saying that when the court, you know, say it goes to the Supreme Court, I don't think they're saying they'll defy the government.
No, they're not.
They're just forcing.
But they are saying that right now they're not going to do it, so it'll be appealed to an appeals, district court, appeals court, and the Supreme Court. I'm just asking you, what would you do if you were the executive? Would you do the same thing that Tim Cook has done?
I think they're saying, hey, as a society, we think this discussion of safeguards is important. I don't disagree with that. I think at the end of the day...
Nobody disagrees with that.
At the end of the day, we want a government that has visibility, and we trust it to use that visibility on our behalf.
Max Levchin, who you and I both know and admire, said that Apple should, this is what I'm trying to get you to say, I mean, i.e. one side or the other, Apple should offer the FBI the exact data, but they should not offer them a master key.
Yeah, that would solve this particular case.
You know, next hour, we'll talk to Apple's lawyer, former United States Solicitor General Ted Olson. We will find out why one of the country's most respected legal names is defending the tech giant. That's ahead.
He didn't seem to want to give us
Let it go, Tim. It's an important part about to come up.
answer to that
He was
question.
not, but he wanted to see it go through the process first.
Yeah, I heard that. You asked it very directly.
And numerous times.
Yes, a couple of times.
So that's a bit of an example of what we talked about early on. Bill Gates and Charlie Rose are actually friends. If you watch the full hour-long interview, they talk about book club and the latest books that they've read, and it's a very friendly experience. In looking at Bill Gates, all of a sudden he gets blindsided. In the last few minutes of an interview about a clean energy project in Africa, Charlie Rose blindsides him with an Apple issue. He's not expecting it from his friend. You see that he's frazzled. He's asked the same question 10 times, 10 different ways. Bill Gates doesn't have a key message to hang his hat on. He's frustrated. And by the time Charlie Rose is done with him, he is bullied into giving an answer that is in complete opposition to what Microsoft already communicated about the Apple issue. This created a frenzy at Microsoft when they had to now come out with a whole host of statements counteracting what Bill did on an hour-long show about clean energy. So this is a good example of what not to do and how not to go into an interview and the repercussions of falling off and not staying on your message. Next one, please, Tim. So with no disrespect, I always encourage people, let's try to figure out how we can be more of an Elizabeth and less of a Bill. If you look at the Elizabeth Warren interview against the Bill Gates interview, you see that Elizabeth Warren is a spokesperson. She's well prepared. The media, she recognizes them as a message delivery tool, and she knows how to get back to her key messages. If you look at Bill, he exemplifies, I can wing it. Charlie's a friend. We're just chatting about the news of the day. I don't need to worry about key messages or bridging and flagging to anything. So as you think about who you want to be as a spokesperson and how you can best represent your organization, I hope that you'll shift more to the mindset of an Elizabeth and less of a Bill. Next one, Tim. I always like to close out my sessions with quick tips for a great interview. And these are intended to help you as you go forward in your journey as spokespeople and working with the media. And overall, what I'll say is that it's your interview. You control the narrative, you control the experience, you control the outcome. Take the time to apply the tips and get back to what's important to you, and you'll have a very long and enjoyable career as a media spokesperson. Next one, Tim. And I'll thank you for your time today and say that hopefully I've shared some tools, tips, tricks, and resources that you can leverage to use your content to bring stories to life. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. That was really fascinating and really, I think, helpful and useful. And so I just want to remind folks, as we have Nikki with us for a few more minutes, if you have any questions for her, to either use chat, go ahead and raise your hand, or feel free to unmute yourselves. I did just kind of want to start and circle back to a comment that was made during the presentation. Miranda, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but just sort of this idea around there's a lot of competition, particularly kind of within the current news cycle. So Miranda, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and just kind of elaborate on sort of question around prioritizing or sort of how to get through it all.
Yeah, I think I was going to that idea, Nikki, that you shared around the fact that there's just so fewer resources in terms of media connections, right? There's just fewer people out there who are having to cover so many different beats these days. And so I think back to a situation earlier this year where we actually had an opportunity to have media. We put on this whole press event about a partnership that we had that was actually a really good story, but one of our reporters were like on their way to the story, and they got pulled away because the Capitol decided to do an impromptu story about like budget situations going on as it related to the pandemic. And so, you know, even when you do have a good angle, when you have all of those things, I think the challenge is just that, especially as nonprofits, we're small potatoes in comparison to like even Amazon, right? Or all of the other stories that are out there that we're competing with. So I guess if you have any advice for how maybe we make our story bigger, or how, you know, without also being gimmicky or all of those other things, like how do we compete when we are, you know, in competition with a three-ring circus all the time?
Well, you know, Miranda, even Amazon suffers. I was out at a site and we had 3 reporters coming for an on-site at one of our centers here in Thornton. And the reporter is driving past me on his way to Fort Collins, apologizing because, oh my goodness, there's been a COVID outbreak at CSU. I'm like, dude, I'm on your way. You can stop and talk to me first. He's like, I can't. Oh, hi, Gavin. I'm working now. Thank you. And so what I recommend in those cases, and what I even do at Amazon, is goes back to that creating the content yourself and packaging it. So what I was able to do in that situation, and you can do for your event, is capture the video, capture the key messages, capture the spokesperson giving the quote he would have given to the reporter, and then sending that over to the reporter. I then actually was able to like host that content on my site. So, and send it out to other reporters who similarly got pulled off onto other stories. And sometimes there's a fine line, because what I really encourage is raw, not overly produced packages, because technically you are providing a resource that they can edit in their own newsrooms. And if it seems like it's overly packaged, they're like, well, I'm not a shill for Amazon. I'm a reporter who's unbiased and covering the news. So in thinking about how you're setting it up, it is straight B-roll footage of what you're trying to show. It's a straight interview of the person talking and giving the talk points that they would have given to the reporter. And it's still photos that they can use to piece the story together with your fact sheet. So there's a way to get into it even if they can't come. And then repurposing that content yourself, using it on your LinkedIn channel, on your Facebook channel, on Twitter to say, hey, we had this great event today. Hear from our spokespeople. Here's pictures and video from the event, because that's another way that reporters can source information and come back into the story. Does that help, Miranda?
That is wonderful, and that is exactly what we did. So thank you so much for just clarifying that we took the right approach with that. And we actually did get picked up later, a couple of days later, and our story was run. So and they were able to use the content that we were able to.
Especially if you have evergreen stuff and it's a good news story. I mean, if it's timely, like someone getting a shot in the arm today, and it's only happening, you may not have, but if it's evergreen and you can package it and it doesn't have to run today, that's a wonderful way to extend. I love it. Congratulations. Well done.
And so as we wait for any other questions to come in through the chat or people to share, I think just sort of reflecting on some of the conversations, Nikki, that have happened in the previous two sessions. And one of the points that came up around sort of data visualization, when you're trying to be, and you use the word succinct and you want it to be kind of powerful and catchy. But there's also this, I think, concern maybe around misinterpretation or disinformation as that becomes buzzwords. So one, I guess the question of, are there ways to kind of combat that or kind of stay on top of making sure that it is your message when you are just kind of sending things out into the universe? And then two, what about stories that are wrong? Like what are your suggestions there?
So thank you for the question about data visualization, and it's shame on me because one of the resources I meant to share with you all that I completely forgot. The Wall Street Journal has a team that is a team of reporters who is specific to data visualization. They only publish, Gavin, one was working, thank you. They only publish stories where it is charts, graphs, and data. And so they have an entire team, they're amazing, but you can, if you have these data points, send these charts over to their data team and they will publish them. With regards to making sure that your data is accurate in your interpretation, with my clients, what we've always done is caveated how we're presenting the data to you with the statements. So we will give you, for example, that bar chart, and we will define for you specifically, this is the time frame in which we captured, this is the sample that this is representative of, and this is the raw facts behind it. And then we will provide what our interpretation of the data is, but then we open ourselves up to questions with the reporter to further clarify the data. There's a lot of competing data. So some person can issue one chart with similar topic to yours and their data competes. And so the conversation becomes around the size of the data set and how the data is validated. And so that's where it gets tricky, and your relationship with the reporter is so important because you can go back in and say, well, hey, that data set that they're referencing only comprises X, whereas ours is X, Y, and Z over this period of time. In terms of corrections, which was your second point, in a live interview situation, I always encourage the moment a mistake is made that you stop, bridge back, and say, I want to take a moment to follow up on that point that you just made. It would be more accurate to say, or the nuance of the point is X. Don't let a mistake go. So if someone is mischaracterized or put words into your mouth during the course of the interview, stop it, correct it, and go back to your storyline. If inaccurate information is published, you're picking up that phone, you're calling that reporter. I had an incident with the Denver Post this last week where they quoted a number of sources, and I called those sources because I was like, why would you say this after the relationship that we've had? And the source said, no, I didn't say that. My quote was taken out of context. This is not accurate. So a call to that reporter gets that story corrected. The problem with that, from my perspective, just full disclosure, is the wrong version already ran. So them correcting it thereafter, who's to say someone's going to see that correction? So you now have to do double duty to try to correct misinformation because they didn't get it right the first time. But yes, I highly recommend going after and seeking the corrections. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. And I want to just see, I think we have a couple of comments happening in the chat. First, let's pop to Miranda again, and then we'll go to Danny. I think, Miranda, you had a kind of follow up.
Yeah.
Yes, and I don't want to be on spotlight too much, so I apologize, but this is a really interesting point for me. So I think also in the work that we do, we are always trying to create a situation of ethical storytelling, right? And the best way to create a situation in which we're storytelling in an ethical manner is to actually provide a platform for the folks that we're working with, our participants in our programs, to tell the story themselves, right? It is always best when that story is coming from you yourself. And we as nonprofits are often doing the work of supporting those folks through their journey. And so in that though, oftentimes those folks they're not trained to be able to speak to the media, right? And no matter how much work we can do to ensure that, it can be challenging. And so if we do go that route of having our participants be our spokesperson, how do we make sure that those folks are honored and respected and not, brutalized?
First, Miranda, would you please remind me of your organization? I don't think I heard that.
Yeah, my organization is Growing Home. So we work with families to ensure that they're thriving and that the communities that they're in are equitable. And we have a food pantry, we have a homeless prevention program, we have a parents as teachers and home visitation program, and then we do a lot of community organizing and advocacy work.
Now, do you have a volunteer board that supports you?
We do. We have a number of volunteer boards. So we have our board of directors, we have subcommittees, and then we also have a program advisory committee that is made up of our participants, the majority of whom are monolingual Spanish speakers.
So the reason I was asking is I have done work with not-for-profit organizations like Mile High United Way, and as part of their annual strategy for communications, they identify 3 to 5 program participants that are representative of the core pillars that they're trying to advance for the year. And then what they do, and what I've done with many of my other not-for-profit clients, is put those individuals through a media training. Because first it's hard. You're being asked to do this, you have a wonderful story to tell, but there's also a necessary level of comfort someone needs to have talking to a stranger and sharing their personal experience and story. So if you can, there's wonderful opportunities to get volunteers who will come in and do media training with your 3 to 5 program participants. And part of it is setting aside, we're going to be doing it. I used to do mine on the weekends because people have jobs, they have children, they can't come and at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday to hang out with Nikki for media training, but they can carve out some time on a weekend and creating a space where they can come in and learn how to be effective communicators for themselves, for your organization, and for the story they're trying to tell. So, if you can, I would try to identify, do you have someone within your board structure who can be a volunteer media trainer? Can you identify 3 to 5 people? And is there ability to kind of carve out that media training session for them? Because you run the risk, as you said, of them being brutalized and not wanting to do it again. And we don't want that. We want to create a comfortable, safe environment where they can be effective storytellers. And the training with media relations professionals is really the best way to do that. And I don't recommend anyone talk to a reporter unless they've had someone kind of practice it with them and get them comfortable at all. I have a wonderful colleague whose husband was in a terrible bus accident. He literally ran a red light and hit a bus. The camera comes on and this guy straight up says, "Oh yeah, I ran that red light, I hit that bus." And I'm like on the phone, I'm like, who media trained this guy? He just confessed to a crime on national television. No, you don't just talk to the media ever. You want to seek counsel first.
Thanks, Nikki. Thanks for that. And Alyce also had a couple of comments that I think ideas in the chat. And so I want to circle back to Danny. Danny, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, the question around sort of interactions on social media.
Sure. Thank you, Nikki.
Danny, who are you with?
I am with Surge Denver, so showing up for racial justice.
Excellent.
So this is not, interacting with journalists is not something we, kind of really target or do. So if we were to start out with this, I in my head, I was making a case for both following somebody kind of as a representative, almost like with the organization, official Twitter account or whatever it might be, or should you follow it more as an individual so you're building a little more of that personal connection? What's just some guidance on kind of that question?
So I think there are two schools of thought there, Danny. And what I'll share with you is it really comes back to the goals of your organization. So theoretically, you want to make the follow about your organization and connect your organization to a real person. So I'm Danny with Surge Denver, because what happens when the person who has been representing your organization as himself leaves and he takes all those followers with him? The organization has now lost this connection. So if you set it up as your organization and identify yourself as someone from that organization, you maintain continuity in terms of messaging, who to contact at the organization, and what the organization represents. If you do it as an individual and that individual leaves, you lose that connection. So in terms of building that personal relationship, when you're talking about it, it is you reaching out, because you're reaching out as Danny with Surge Denver, and I'm reaching out as this person representing this organization. So that way you can build a personal relationship without losing sight of the organization that you represent. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Any other questions while we have Nikki and her expertise with us? Okay, great. Nikki, thank you so much. This was really, really fascinating. I think a lot of really good insights for all of us to consider in various roles that we might have and kind of our interactions and how to leverage the PESO model. Thank you.
Happy to help. Thanks for having me.
All right, so with that, I'm going to toss it to Tim real quick, just to kind of bring us home.
Yeah, and for those of you who joined us a little bit late, Angela was supposed to join us from Typeform today to talk about survey techniques and best practices. And she sends her regrets that her son was very sick today and she couldn't make it. But she said if you have any questions on that side, to reach out to her. I just put the email for her in the chat. And I'll send her out an email with all the links that she provided me for more resources on that front. And just as a fun to do, we put the post-event survey into Typeform just so you could see what that looks like. But a really interactive, engaging survey feedback mechanism. And I also want to just quickly tell you, I've got the link to the grants that I will put in here into the chat room as well. And once again, we've got 3 $2,000 grants for Denver, or for all of Colorado. And we've also got some other smaller grants for licenses for some of the tools that Nikki mentioned, Adobe tools. We've got some data visualization tools from last week. I put a list together there. If there are other ones that you see that you would like, let us know what those are. We promise not to make this application process very long at all. We don't want to create more work for you. We already know you're very busy, but take a look at that. And finally, I just want to thank Keith and Alyce, Articulated Intelligence, for joining us for the work this week to put all this together, for Nikki for joining us. And sorry about the technical difficulties, but I'm glad I could drive the train for you. Really appreciate it. And obviously for Jill and Cynthia, for all of you who have been here for 3 weeks with us, they've done a great job getting the engagement up and really kind of making this interactive. And most of all, I would like to thank all the participants for joining us for the last few weeks and for all the hard work that you do. Your insights have been really valuable. And I'm just going to put my email address in the chat window. It's also on the end of the survey. So if you have any questions on media, data, technology, any ways that Peace Tech Lab can help you at all, feel free to reach out anytime. Our goal is we're doing 16 cities across the US, and it's to come back and do cities again, but also for the issues that we're facing, to be able to kind of connect cities together. So, Baltimore and Denver are working on something on economic justice, that we can bring those groups together, potentially on some tools that could solve some of those challenges and make some of those networking connections. So with that, I will leave you. Everybody have a good weekend, and thanks again for our participants, for our trainers, and for Jill and Cynthia for facilitating all this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
All right, looks like everybody we're out. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. No, thank you, Keith. Really appreciate it. And thanks for the audible and kind of doing double duty today. Really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. This was very, very interesting. My gosh.
Yeah, it was great to be a part of. And again, personally, just also learned a whole lot throughout the whole process. So great for the opportunity.
Awesome. Let us know if there's anything else we can do for you guys in the near and distant future. It was wonderful to connect with all of you. Be sure to connect via LinkedIn, and we'll keep the conversation going. And thank you all for doing what you do. Very appreciate it.